Hey guys, this is Mr. O'Brien, and this is another science help video. Now remember, this series covers a lot of science topics. We touch on biology, chemistry, as well as Keystone Review material as well. So today what we're going to focus on is enzymes. Now remember, enzymes are a type of macromolecule, and more specifically, they're proteins. So what this means is that these enzymes are made of single units called amino acids. So if you look here, every single one of these little balls or spheres, those are an amino acid. Each one of those amino acids binds together by a peptide bond, and what happens is eventually they fold in upon each other to make a specific shape. Okay, so we're going to talk about enzymes. Remember, enzymes are proteins, okay, protein molecules. So enzymes are proteins, like I said earlier. Proteins, that's something we really need to know. But these proteins, they act as a biological catalyst. And what this just simply means is they speed up reactions in our body. So what enzymes do is they're what's known as catalyst. And a catalyst lowers the activation energy. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, what is activation energy? If you notice here, this graph represents what an enzyme really does. So this first blue line represents a reaction when there is no enzyme present. You notice that there's this big hump, or there's this big amount of energy that needs to be overcome before it can cascade down to the reaction to occur. So what happens is when an enzyme is present, it lowers this activation energy. With a lower activation energy, the reaction can occur much quicker and reactions occur faster. And what happens is these fast reactions allow our body to pretty much perform a lot of different things. So enzymes, what they do is they increase the rate of reaction. So in other words, our enzymes are increasing the rate at which chemical reactions occur inside of our body, which allows us to survive and perform tasks much easier. Now, an enzyme is made up of a couple parts, okay? So we're going to draw the enzyme, okay, almost like this, tangled mess. Remember, it's a chain of bonded amino acids. And you often see it as, represented like this, okay? So this is going to be our enzyme, okay? And our enzyme, as you can see, has an opening right here, okay? Now, that opening, this specific area right here, this is where the reaction is going to occur. Now, where the reaction occurs, we call that an active site. So the active site is where the chemical reaction occurs. And why that's important is an enzyme pretty much allows all of the parts to be very close together so the reaction can occur very quickly. Now, the piece that fits inside of that active site is what's known as a substrate. So this substrate is going to perfectly fit inside of that enzyme. So this is what's known as our substrate. So this is the material that's going to either be broken down or changed into something else. And what happens is the substrate comes in and binds perfectly to that active site. Enzymes are specific to certain substrates so that a certain chemical reaction can occur there. So again, we're made of a couple parts, and let's draw this a little simpler, less cartoony. So we have our enzyme, and what happens is the substrate will fit that enzyme perfectly, okay? And that substrate fits inside this active site so that the chemical reaction can occur properly, okay? So that's the basic structure of these enzymes. So what enzymes do is they lower what's known as activation energy. And we talked about that activation energy earlier. So by lowering the activation energy, our chemical reaction speeds up, and it speeds up the reaction. So what happens is the enzyme does a couple things. One, it brings everything close together. Okay? Brings all of the parts very close together. And two, it speeds up the reaction. Okay? So by bringing everything close, it speeds up the biochemical reaction. Okay, and I'm going to write that RXN. So it brings things close together. It also speeds up the reaction. Now there's a couple of factors that affect enzymes, and the first one we have is pH. So enzymes only work at certain pHs. So pH is just a measure of the acidity in a substance that can change the shape of an enzyme. Enzymes function best at specific pHs. So if you look here, we have pepsin, amylase, and arginase. And each one of these enzymes are in different parts of the body. So for example here, pepsin is found in our stomach acid, which is why it occurs at a very acidic place. Amylase is in our saliva, which is pretty neutral. And arginase occurs in a very basic solution. So these three different enzymes work best at different pHs depending on where they're found in the body. Now another factor that affects enzymes is temperature. So there is a certain temperature where the enzyme works properly. This is what's known as optimal temperature. Okay? And optimal temperature is where the activity is the highest. But what happens is when our enzymes, or when the temperature rises above that optimal, what happens is we begin to see the enzyme denature. So what denaturing means is that the enzyme begins to break apart because of the high heat conditions. And what we get is when we break down the enzyme, the reaction no longer occurs. Now you often see this in a fried egg. So if you look, you have a yellow yolk, right? But when you crack the egg, it's not white. After you cook it at a high temperature, your egg yolk or your egg whites turns white. And what happens is the enzymes in the egg are beginning to denature, and that's when you get that white coloration. So in review, enzymes are the workhorse of the body. They catalyze all the reactions that happen inside of a cell. Now, without enzymes, our body would fall apart. Now, if we have a lack of an enzyme, it could be very severe. Now, when we lack some enzymes, it can cause indigestion. Others, it can cause death. So enzymes are extremely important in our body, and without them, our body would not be able to function properly. So hopefully this review video on enzymes helps you out. This is Mr. O'Brien, signing off.